Hi, I'm Greg Palumbo, Exhibits Manager here at Ah-Tah-Thi-Ki Museum, and today I'd like to share with you some treasures from our vault. Today I'd like to share some treasures from our archival vault. These are papers written by President Zachary Taylor, then Colonel and General Zachary Taylor. Zachary Taylor was president from 1849 to 1850. However, his military career spanned 40 years prior. In 1837 to 1840, he was the commanding officer in Florida. During those years, he fought against the Seminole tribe of Florida. In this letter here that I have in front of me, dated 1839, Taylor lays out his plan for sweeping the Indians out of Florida. Zachary Taylor's military was meant for fighting in battles, big, decisive battles where he would fight his enemy on an open field. Indians wouldn't do that. They would hide in the hammocks and pick off little groups here and there. The military, however, found the magic number. If there were 40 or more men, the Seminoles would not attack. If he had less than 40 men, the Seminoles would be a little more likely to attack. And if it's a small party of just a few men or wagon trains, they would likely attack that wagon train to try and harass and stop the military might that was coming down on them. To that end, Zachary Taylor laid out a plan that was approved by the Secretary of War to sweep those men out of Florida. In doing so, he took the state of Florida, seen in this map here that accompanies the letter explaining his plan, into 20 by 20 mile squares. That's about a day's march from one post to another. In the center of each one of those squares, he would put a small regiment. That regiment would have enough men to protect their supplies, as well as go out and perform patrols. Basically, he was using his own men to bait the Seminoles out of the hammocks. The idea was that they would go and around their immediate area, within about 5 miles, they would clear every single hammock and go through meticulously to see if they could find any Seminoles. Beyond that, they would run along the edges of the hammocks in patrols. When a patrol was sighted by Seminoles, hopefully then being attacked and flushing the Seminoles out and exposing their position, they would then either engage the enemy or they would hightail it back and go to the next regiment 20 miles away to get reinforcements, come back and try and hopefully find the Seminoles that were in those hammocks. This was the kind of plan that had worked in the past and he was hoping would work in Florida. However, it was too easy for the Seminoles to move from place to place and evade capture, and really they just continually harassed and picked off little groups of Taylor's men. This plan overall didn't work. The document itself is extremely well written and in great shape, and it's very rare that we actually have the enclosed map that Taylor included when he sent this letter. Usually maps are sold differently and broken away from the letters by collectors. So it's really great that we have this intact. Another letter that we have in the collection is the after-action report from the Battle of Lake Okeechobee. On December 27, 1837, Colonel Taylor wrote this letter while he was sitting in a cabbage hammock after the Battle of Okeechobee, where he recounts in detail his actions of the day. I'd like to read an excerpt from this letter. I reached the hammock in which they were stationed between 12 and 1 p.m. when the action commenced, the enemy opening a warm fire on the volunteers, who comprised the first line, a great portion of whom fell back in rear of the 4th and 6th Infantry, which corps, under one of the warmest and most destructive fire ever experienced from Indians, particularly the 6th, pressed forward, gained the hammock, and after a severe struggle for more than an hour after being joined by the 1st Infantry, which were held in reserve, and 2 companies of the 4th that had been detached to the right, who joined a short time before they closed of the battle. The enemy was completely routed and driven in every direction, and were pursued by the troops until near night, and until they were completely exhausted. This account was written on paper that was the only paper left in the camp. And I'm going to flip it over now, where you can see these letters would have been folded and then used wax to seal the letter. Here we have a postscript, and I'll read you what the postscript says. P.S. As soon as I can do so, I will make you a more full report of the battle and my operations. I am now writing without candle or pine knots as a substitute, in a cabbage tree hammock in the center of a large prairie on a very dirty sheet of paper, which is the only one in camp. The Battle of Lake Okeechobee was a definitive battle for the Seminole Tribe of Florida. And depending on who you ask, the Seminole Tribe or the U.S. military both feel they were victors. While the Seminole Tribe did have to retreat from the battle, they also took more casualties from the U.S. troops than the U.S. inflicted on them. According to Zachary Taylor, he was the victor of Battle of Okeechobee, which can be seen here in his many military accomplishments, which were commissioned in 1847, just before his death in 1850, to exemplify what a fine soldier he was for the United States. These are some of the best pieces of Americana we have in our collection. Currently on display, you can see the Tools of War exhibit, which has many of the artifacts that are related to these pieces that were used during the Seminole Wars. Inspired by those are some of these items in our gift shop, which you can purchase to help support the museum's mission of preserving these fine artifacts. To also help support the mission of the museum, please stop by Ah-Tah-Thi-Ki.com, where you can learn more information about what's happening at the museum, and like us on Facebook. Thank you for joining us from Treasures from the Vault.